Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Built Different Finance. Great to see you all again. And today we're going to be talking about 10 reasons why people don't think they need life insurance and the truth behind that. Welcome, Roger Lubbock, the CEO of 300 Leadership Development. Thanks for being here again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is an exciting topic because I was the one who thought these reasons when I first joined this business. So I'm excited for today.
Awesome. So we're going to do something different. We're a little casual. Imagine we're at our kitchen tables, and I wrote down a few top 10 reasons why people don't think they need life insurance. So we're just going to have a chat. So glad you guys can join us and come along for the ride. So, Roger, okay, reading my notes.
Yeah.
One reason people say they don't need life insurance is I'm too young. I'll buy that later. And
Mm.
why do you think so many people think that?
Yeah, well, I can speak from my own experience. When you're young, you're healthy, never been injured or never been hurt or been sick before. You think time is on your side and you think you're invincible. And um, so, yeah, there is a common misconception that you should just do it, later in life or when you have responsibilities and when you have kids and when you have a job and this and that. But I think there's this. What I believe is like you should get it as soon as possible or sooner than later because um, right, when you get a car, it's illegal to drive off the lot. It's illegal to drive off the lot without car insurance. When you buy a home, you can't buy a home without homeowners insurance. When you get a rental property or you're renting out a place, you have to have renters insurance because you just don't know when it's going to happen,
Right.
So I think it's because life hasn't happened. People are more, hesitant to sign up for it. And it's funny because I do meet young people who believe in it completely,
Yeah.
and it's partly because they had a family member who did pass away or they had someone get sick. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, but I do see that happen or see that response like, oh, I'm young, like I'll get it later,
Mm.
And by the way, you would probably want to get it sooner than later because it's cheap today versus
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, I was thinking that, I had a client and he was eager to get life insurance because his mom had passed away without it. But unfortunately, he didn't
Mhm.
qualify. And, you have that. And just like what you said in the last of your statement there, the younger you are, the healthier you're going to be. So, should you not get it when you're older? No, you should still get it. But definitely, if you can think about it ahead of time, I love those 20-year-olds, you get with them and they're all about it. So the next reason why people think, oh, I don't need life insurance. Why? I don't have kids. So if you're not a
Mhm.
parent, oh, well, then you don't need life insurance, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. The hardest people, in my experience, to protect are those who don't have anybody depending on them. So if you're single, right, you live on your own, no one's depending on you for any type of assistance if you're no longer here, then why? Why get it? And I say this, a couple reasons why you should consider it is, well, is that going to be forever? Right? Do you plan to have a family? Do you plan to have kids? Right? Why wait until that happens? It's going to be more expensive. Second thing is, life insurance has evolved and changed throughout the years. There's this misconception that life insurance is really just death insurance that only pays out when you pass away. But a lot of life insurance today have riders or they have the ability where if you get sick, right, you get diagnosed with cancer, or you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, or you get in a car accident, you're not able to work, you actually can access the death benefit while you're still alive. So the excuse of, hey, I don't have any kids goes out the window because, yeah, you may not have kids, but who depends on you? You depend on you,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
if you can't even depend on yourself, then you end up being a statistic. You end up depending on, the government, the
Yeah.
state for assistance. And tell me, they're not gonna the government's goal, guys, is not to make you rich, right? If anything, their goal is to keep you right above poor. It's
Right.
like, can
Yeah.
I just keep this guy, sustained, but I'm not gonna make him rich, but also like he's gonna be in a financial dire circumstances. And a lot of times you lose those benefits once you start making money again, you know? So life insurance is that great way of bridging that gap where you don't have to deplete your savings, deplete your 401k, your IRA, lose your home. You can protect all those assets, and while you're beating cancer, while you're healing, life insurance is there to cover that gap and bridge you to that stage in your life where you're healthy again. So hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the government needs our tax money, right? So they can continue with whatever their efforts are. But, something you said just made me think, kind of borrowing a story from someone that I've known through my life, but it's actually one of my friend's best friends. And she actually was in a car accident in her 20s and became
Mhm.
paraplegic and couldn't walk. And then now she's just probably around my age. Well, her mom's taken care of her all these years, and her mom actually
Mhm.
fell and got paralyzed. So now she's
Wow.
stuck, there's no benefits. And, a lot of times people just don't know where to turn. So we're trying to help them think about this process before they get in those situations. We never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. And I love the fact that there's riders or, living benefits, talk about that today or maybe on another podcast. But they really help if you get in those situations. So,
Right, right,
really good point.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I would say another reason people say I don't need life insurance is my job already gives me life insurance. Why would I need more?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Two things I tell myself, and I try to teach people this, is like, uh, if you believe that your job and the government's going to come to save you, got to think about whose interests are they really looking after, right? Yes, your employer is going to give you life insurance, that's great, but they're only going to give you um, they're not going to give you an exorbitant amount of coverage. And what I mean by that, it's usually just one time your annual income. So you got to ask yourself today, is 1 year of work going to cover the next 10, 20, 30 years of
Good point.
expenses? So
Mhm.
when someone says, "Oh, I have $50,000 in coverage or $100,000 in coverage," I'm like, "Hey, some coverage better than no coverage. At least they'll be able to bury you and not worry about the funeral expenses, but beyond the funeral, who's going to take care of the bills, right? Does your wife and your kids have to find work? Do they have to drop out of the college? Do they have to, whatever it may be, right? And so, um, if you do have work and life insurance, great, but just examine how much coverage you have. And the other thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen a layoff before. Have you ever seen a company restructured? I was just reading an article the other day that Disney artists, the people who created all these wonderful characters and drew them and, created these characters for the Marvel series,
Mhm.
they're all getting laid off because
Yeah.
AI can do their job now.
Yeah.
So
Computer
imagine being an
generated.
artist for, yeah, for 10, 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden you're just, boom, the thing that you were relying on is no longer there. So if you're no longer an employee, they're not going to give you the benefits. So
Right.
you're only getting the benefits because you're an employee, but no, once you're no longer an employee, those things are gone. Sometimes you'll be able to transfer or transport that life insurance policy. They'll ask you, "Hey, do you want to keep this policy?" And sometimes you're able to, but then you have to pay the actual price, which can be really high. Um, so learning how to take ownership and not relying on your employer to take care of you and your family is just one thing I would suggest for people to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like when one point that you made, maybe it's one times your annual salary. Is that really
Mhm.
going to be enough to cover everything? I know I feel like I wasn't planning to share all these stories, but I have all these stories. And I think about another friend whose husband passed away in his 40s, and he did have life insurance, but it, paid for the house, fortunately, which was great. But she still needed to figure out what to do. How am I going to provide? And still had teenagers at home. You just don't know what's going to happen. And then, you have disability with work, but I think it's what, 60% or 40%? It's
Right.
still not very high. And so, kind of outside of work, you have to think of something additional. And like you said, my own husband was affected with his company having large layoffs. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, you do have to plan ahead. So, that's really good.
Right.
I think that's like the primary one that you hear from most people is my company has insurance, I'm fine. So, you got to kind of
Right.
think outside the box, and it might be a little bit more than you were thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I would say another reason why people think about life insurance, they think, oh, it's way too expensive. Before they look
Mm,
at it, they just kind of hear it. They have this belief that it's going to be out of their price range until they actually sit down and see the numbers.
right.
Have you
Right.
seen that
Absolutely.
before?
Uh, I remember doing a group presentation at a home. There was like 8 people in the room, and 7 of them were pretty polite, and they were taking a couple were taking notes or asking questions. And I just remember this young lady in the corner, and she was with her partner, and she just had this grouchy face, and she had said like, life insurance is a scam, and I think it's too expensive. Like why do we need it?
Mhm.
And she was disappointed. She's like, man, I came over here, like my friends invited me over. I didn't know it was going to be about life insurance. So I was kind of caught off guard by that, and I didn't want to lose the whole crowd. But then I looked out the window and I said, "Hey, is that your yellow Mustang outside? Is that
Mm,
your yellow Mustang?" He said, "Yeah." That's awesome. That's a really, really nice car. If you don't mind me asking, how much do you have car insurance on it? And she says, "Yeah, I do." Like, well, like how much more or less is it? And he's like about $350 a month. I'm like, all right, cool. Um, and how much is that car worth? That looks like a really nice car. And she's like, it's about 45,000. $45,000. I'm like, all right, great. So you're paying $350 a month, right? For the opportunity, the ability that if your car was totaled, they'll give you a $45,000 check so you can get a new car,
mm,
right? But let's say you were in the car, right? The car is totaled and you're totaled too. So you're totaled too, right? Like how much are you worth?
mm, mhm.
How much you worth, right? And I said to the partners, like, hey, would you want $1 million check? Would you want a $45,000 check? And the partner says, I'll take the million. And the partner said, I want the million and a $45,000 check. I was like, yeah, I'd want both too, right? You know, insurance seems expensive until you realize the costs of not having it.
Mhm.
Right? So insurance is just having the ability to tap into a larger pool of money that you do not have. So you're buying access to money which you do not have
Yeah,
just in case something happens to you, right? So it may seem expensive, but when you compare it to car insurance, home insurance, renter's insurance, and for what you're getting back, it's
yeah,
almost a scam for the insurance company, meaning really? I pay 40, 50, 60, $100 a month. And, for a term, you can get a $500,000 policy or $1 million
yeah.
policy. So you're telling me I pay $75 a month, which was, I think my first policy I ever bought for myself was like $1 million, $83 a month policy. I was young at the time. So I can access $1 million for 83 bucks,
Mhm.
right? Well, that seems unfair, right? That seems unfair, but that's what we're doing. We're buying money with money, right? We're
Mhm.
buying money with money. So I would challenge the belief that it is too expensive and just look around. Well, if it is too expensive, like, well, is it the cost or is it the amount of coverage you're looking at, right? I do believe that you should have some type of coverage, whether small or big, but just consider it to be a part of the portfolio and your foundation when you build your portfolio.
Absolutely. So good because, you are buying money with money. I don't know, let's see, how long would it take me to get $1 million, And
Yeah.
yet you're getting
Yeah.
a policy to be able to cover yourself. And it's not just yourself, it's the legacy. It's taking care of your family. I have someone and they were talking about their nieces and nephews. They don't have kids. It's an amazing legacy. And if something does happen to you where you need those living benefits or you have you want to borrow from yourself. There's just a lot of
Yeah.
diversity there. So it's kind of nice. But okay. Let's see. Next one. I'll just invest my money. Why do I need
Yeah.
life insurance? I'll just put my money into the market.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know I hear this term a lot in our industry that hey, the good practice is to buy a term and then invest the difference. And you come to find out people who buy a term rarely invest the difference
Mhm.
because they don't necessarily know where to invest it, right? And so unless you are studied and you're well versed and you do your homework, it's important to invest. But the way I look at money and investments and what we do is kind of like when I open up the drawer for the forks, spoons, and knives, right? So if you need a knife, you pull out a knife, right? If you need a fork, you pull out a fork. If you need a spoon, you pull out a spoon, right? If I'm going to eat ice cream, I'm not going to pull out a knife. I'm going to use a spoon. So every investor or savings program or financial product has a specific purpose, right? So I'll give you an example. If I invest my money, if I invest $100 today
Mhm.
and I die tomorrow, my family gets $100.
Mhm.
Right. But if I buy a life insurance policy with 100 and I die tomorrow, then my family will get 500,000.
Mhm.
So it's a different tool. So you can't save money fast enough. You can't grow money fast enough to prepare you for the unexpected that will happen next week, next month,
Right.
next year,
Yeah.
right? I have this question, when I ask my clients, like, hey, you have $1 million in coverage. How long would it take you to save $1 million? And they'll tell me, oh, it'll take me 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, whatever. I say, hey, great thing is you don't have to save this money. You bought money with money. So just like a fork, a tool is a tool, a hammer is a tool. You have to understand it is a tool, and it's good to have both, but they serve completely different purposes,
Mhm.
right? So instead of depleting the money you invested, because that's eventually what's going to happen to your family, they can protect what you invest with that life insurance policy. They don't have to lose their home. They don't have to lose their college savings. They don't have to lose their checking, like nothing. They don't have to lose anything because life insurance is there to protect them.
Yeah, that's good. You have that drawer full of tools, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't really eat ice cream with a fork. You need a spoon, right? There's different tools for different things that you use in your life. And even, a lot of people that say invest in term, get term and invest the difference. I think they have also some of the policies we have, And so I think that term is really good. It has a place. It kind of insures your insurance if you think about it that way. But it is good, but you want to have something so that your family, yourself, that you're protected and in a good space. Um, Good. I love that. So, okay, the
Mhm.
next one is nothing's going to happen to me.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah. It's I think I've heard that maybe two or three times in my career, and uh the thought in the statement kind of, it kind of confused me because obviously something happens to everybody, right? We'll eventually, like, there's two things that guarantee life, death and taxes.
Yeah.
But, I always try to see where people are coming from. And I share this story about, like when I was growing up and I was not a collegiate athlete, but I played basketball and I played basketball all the time. And I remembered the very first time I sprained my ankle. Like it was a really, really bad sprain. Up until that point, I'd never been injured, I'd never been hurt, right? And I've been playing basketball for almost 10 years and I've never ever experienced it. And I remember not being able to walk for like a week, and I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, it does happen. It
Yeah,
eventually catches up with you,
it
you know?
does.
So and a lot of times when people say, "Oh, it's nothing's gonna happen to me," they just haven't experienced it yet, or they
Yeah,
haven't seen someone in their life,
yeah,
you know. So having to convince those people, like, "Hey, life is going to happen. We just need to be ready and prepared for it." It's just understanding where they came from, why they believe that, and being able to alter and change that belief, right? So,
right. Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe think about a couple of things. I couldn't walk for 6 months. I had a newborn baby and I had broke my ankle. And I remember talking my whole life, oh, I never have broken a bone, And then I really did it. And I couldn't walk for 6 months and I had an infant. So that was definitely challenging. I could have used something to pull money out and it would have been great to have my policy. Also, just lastly, I we had an incident here in our town where an elderly
Mm,
gentleman had gone to the grocery store and he had pulled into the
I heard about
parking
this.
spot, and he thought that he had hit the brake, but instead he hit the gas. And unfortunately, his
Mm,
truck went through a storefront, and a young girl who had just graduated from high school and a few other
oh,
people were injured, but she actually passed away on impact. So, you really don't know when your time will be called, right? And
yeah.
so it's not about being fearful but it is about being prepared, and all things we like to, I'm a prepper, I'm kind of I like to prepare ahead of time. I live in a place where we get hurricanes, so you got to kind of plan and make sure you have a little bit of stuff here. And so I always like to plan ahead. And I think in all things in life, we need to be prepared. So this is definitely one of those that people don't think about until they're in this situation. And if we can help anybody to
Mm,
take care of themselves and not have to worry about it, it definitely would be a blessing for us and for them. Here's another one. Life insurance companies, they never pay. They never pay out. Have you
yeah,
heard
yeah.
that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know when I was a young agent, coming into the industry, I would Google, I would Google, and this is something I wouldn't suggest for anybody because, if you ever heard of analysis paralysis, right, you can be overwhelmed with information.
Oh yeah.
One way to never ever make a decision is to read everything on the internet, right? So,
WebMD, what's
uh,
that? You got every medical condition you find on WebMD.
yeah, right. You could be having chest pain, and all of a sudden, WebMD says, "Oh, you're having a heart attack, or you have heart disease, or whatever it may be." Right. So one thing I would look into is where the experience is coming from. Right. So, life insurance companies, obviously, their goal is to make sure that they honor their contract. So you're in a binding contract, right? So you pay premium, they pay out, right? Now, there's a couple of things that will violate that contract or make sure the contract is null and void. Uh, first one is you stop paying, right? So
Right.
if I stop paying for my car insurance and my policy lapse and I get in a car accident, guess what? I'm not covered,
No
right?
bueno.
That's why that's why people freak out when they get laid off or they get terminated from work. What is the first thing they think about?
Cobra.
Health insurance,
Uh-huh.
Cobra coverage. Like, well, I don't want any gap, right, in my health coverage because if there's a gap, then sure, I'm going to go bankrupt. I'm going to lose everything and anything. So, I've seen a lot of people because their mom or their dad just stopped paying premiums, right, over time because they stopped paying premiums. Guess what? The family didn't know they stopped paying premiums, and the contract's not going to be honored, right?
Right.
Um, Another reason why is there's something called a 2-year contestability period, and I experienced this as a young agent. We filled out an app for a client, and come to find out during they got approved, right, within 24 hours, but during like 3 to 4 months later, they filed a claim. They filed a claim saying, I got diagnosed with cancer. I'd like to pull money out of this. Well, insurance company has a 2-year contestability period that says anything that happens within the first 2 years, they have the right to contest it, meaning they have a right to investigate. Well, come to find
Right.
out, this person knew they had cancer the day before they applied,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And it just hadn't been registered yet. So the insurance company obviously didn't pay out, and they also end up paying the premiums back to the client. It's like, hey, we can't honor this. We're not going to take your money. Here's your money back, right? So I would say this, like, look into the reasons why, right? But if the insurance company is not paying out, it's a very, very, very high chance that that life insurance company is going to go out of business if that's their practice,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I
um,
think that we have reputable companies we work with.
right, right, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think there's over 800 insurance companies out there, and you can go online, you can see their rating and how well they pay out and this and that, right? And so, a company, regardless of what company is, their goal is to make sure they have a reputable name, that they keep their word, but also on our end as clients and as agents, we have to make sure we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're doing things right, so that we can make sure that that client is covered and is divulging all the information or disclosing, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. And insurance companies, they've got deep pockets because they have to be insured themselves to make sure that they can pay out the
Right.
client. So you want to
Right.
make sure that you have a reputable company. And, fortunately, we work with, a few. And so that's really nice. Our clients can breathe a sigh of relief that they are going to be taken care of if everything is on the up and up. And, I'm sure people do take advantage. They wait.
Mm,
Like what did I said? Yesterday when you're healthy, get your insurance. Don't wait till tomorrow when something comes up, because you won't qualify. Okay, another thing I heard, permanent life insurance, it's a scam.
yeah, yeah,
Have you
yeah.
heard that one before?
I hear it from a lot of folks, and uh, if it was a scam, right? If it was a scam, why does it exist, right? And so I think a lot of times there's a stigma about life insurance, so we have to get over that hump. But also understanding, like I said earlier, like there's forks, spoons, there's hammers, there's wrenches, there's screwdrivers. You have to understand what it is, what you are purchasing, right?
Mhm.
A life insurance policy, right, especially a permanent life insurance policy, is first and foremost a life insurance policy before it is anything else,
Right.
right? So, meaning an insurance company is going to be looking to, if you're purchasing life insurance, their head is like, well, this person wants to get covered. Right. Now, if you're using it to build cash value, right, you're going to do things on your end as a client where you can fund it aggressively. You're going to purchase the smallest amount of life insurance, right? So you can get the more cash. And there's people I've met where they don't really care about the cash. They really genuinely don't believe in term. It's like,
Yeah.
why would I put money in the term policy that, I have a story of a client who I sat down with, and their dad was sitting down during the presentation. And he said, and during the entire presentation, he kept fidgeting and he started speaking under his breath. And I'm like, and I said, sir, is there anything you want to share? Do you have any questions? He's like, man, Roger, I saw this presentation 15 years ago, right? 15 years ago, and I didn't move forward, and I'm kicking myself because I'm about to retire, right? I end up getting a term policy, and that term policy is going to expire the year after I retire.
Hmm.
Right? So he looks to his daughter, right, and to his future son-in-law, who I was doing the presentation for, and he says, "Do this.
Oh,
Get this policy.
yeah.
Get this policy."
Hmm.
One of the saddest calls I ever got was from the daughter, right? And the daughter calling me and says, "Hey, my dad's dream was always to run a Ironman, right? Always run an Ironman after he retired. He ended up drowning in the water just a couple months after retirement, right? And no term policy already lapsed, right? Because they retired, like all those benefits were gone, right? And it was just the 401k, it was just the pension that was left behind. But other than that, and can you imagine having that, like sitting with that, realize that, gosh, I should have just, right? Permanent life
Right.
insurance is meant to solve permanent problems, which is
Hmm.
we're all going to die someday. We just don't know when. So buying a term policy is great. It protects you in the prime years of your life. But beyond that, if your goal is to leave a legacy and to make sure that you leave this earth better, right, than you were
Yeah.
brought into the world,
Mhm.
right? If you want to leave a legacy, then you would want to consider permanent life insurance. And also, what kind of permanent life insurance? Because there's whole life policies, there's final expense policies, there's IULs, there's variable universal life policies, there's universal life policy. So there's guaranteed right insurance. There's a lot of different permanent life insurance policies, which all serve a different purpose, right?
Mhm.
Yes, they all pay out a death benefit, but there's a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of things you could do to customize that policy to tailor it to you and your needs.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. And I think that's why we like to get with our clients and let's go over and see what fits you best. We're not a one size fits all. Everybody's different. So yeah. Definitely have to think about it.
Mhm.
And that is the hardest thing. When someone that we could have helped, you're not able to, and it's not about, oh, we want to leave your family wealthy, but it's hard enough to lose you. We want to leave
Right,
them with something so they can take care of, keeping the kids in school, keeping the house, keeping the car, get going to the store, whatever you need to do. But yeah, that's definitely a challenging one. Um, Okay, two more. I'd rather spend my money now and not put it away into a policy. Have you heard that one
got it.
before?
Yes, yes, yes. Question is, what are we spending our money on? All
Hmm.
right, that is, um, more valuable than what we could do to protect our family, right? So I always say this like, hey, our money will follow whatever is important in our life. That's where our money will go, right? So if we believe food's important, we'll spend a lot of money. If health is important, we'll spend a lot of money on health, right? If protecting our family is important, then we'll put money there, right? So
Hmm.
it's gonna come down to your belief system. The thing I like to think about is if your 65-year-old self was sitting with you today, right? What would they tell you? What would they
That's good.
ask of you?
Yeah.
Right? They would say, hey, think about me because we're going to meet one day. And I don't know how many times I've actually sat with someone in their 60s. And after the presentation, they would always have this like, gosh, Roger, where were you 10,
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago? I'm like, well, not doing this, that's for sure. Right. So, but these tools are out there. And unfortunately, a lot of times the only way you really hear about these tools is from a family friend, right? Or on social media, right? There's no, like, you don't go to there's no store on the corner that says, "Hey, we do life insurance. We do everything with life insurance and financial services." Like, there's no stores like that on the street that you can go to and
Hmm.
just get educated. No, they don't teach you about this in elementary school, high school, college, none of that, right?
Hmm.
So, and unfortunately, we do live in a me generation. Like, I want the car now, I want the house now, and I want all that now, right? Versus later. So we have to, when I think about life insurance, when I think about the goals of it, is a long-term vehicle and not enough of our youth. And to be quite honest, not enough of anybody is
Uh-huh.
just thinking long term these days.
Yeah.
They're just thinking about like, I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah, and then you get with, that 90-year-old person working at Walmart, because they didn't plan ahead. And it happens to all of us. We before we get a good financial education, we don't know. I can tell you too how many people I've met, especially the elderly. I'll be out talking to someone and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. I wish I knew this back in the day, and my family needs to learn this," because they want them to be taken care of. And I think it sometimes takes us a while. That's why I really like to help just, the young and the old, the average people, just so they can be in a better spot, right? Because we didn't want to regret that opportunity that we passed up. Okay, last one. This is the best. My family, they'll just figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's um I think a lot of times people will feel that way because that was their quote unquote lived experience. My parents didn't leave me anything and I had to figure it out on my own. So why would I do that for my kids? So, and I agree, like there's some level of struggle that is good, right? It is good for people to struggle because it builds character, it'll grow people. And I like to look at, generationally, like what is each generation, what kind of impact are they gonna make? Wealth time takes time to build, and it only takes one generation to lose,
Oh yeah.
right? So we have to be financially educated. So, the way I look at life insurance is like, yeah, my family will figure it out, but would you want them to figure it out with $500,000? Right? Would you want them to figure out with $1 million? Because here's the thing. If you don't have if you don't have the ability to write a check tomorrow to your family for 10 times your annual income, 20 times your annual income, 30 times your annual income, you need life insurance. right?
Mhm.
Because if you're no longer here, yeah, they're gonna have to figure out how to make ends meet, how to make sure the roof stays over their head. But that's kind of selfish if you think about it, right? Hey, I want you to figure out this life without me. That's what you're essentially saying. I want you to figure it out without me. And
Mhm.
guess what? They will figure it out. Right? They will figure it out. But one thing insurance does, it helps alleviate that financial pressure. So as your family is trying to grieve your passing, they're
Mhm.
not having to worry about finances. You know what they can actually do? They can actually grieve the loss of their loved one.
Mhm.
Right? I'll tell a story where, Val's mom, had lost their husband in the middle of the night, died of an aneurysm, and all she could do and all she could say to him is like, we left me with nothing. I don't have anything. You left me with nothing, you know? And I don't want my family saying those words when I pass away. It's like, man, Roger left his family with nothing,
Yeah.
didn't leave a legacy, right? Didn't leave an impact, right? What kind of impact do you want to make? Yeah, you can't take anything with you, but how much do you want to leave behind? What kind of difference do you want to leave behind to your family, right? So that's what I would say
Yeah.
when it comes to my family figuring it out, because they will figure it out,
Yeah.
right? We are resilient people, but gosh, let's alleviate or give some relief while they figure it out. That's what I would say.
Absolutely, because it's not about all the money you leave behind, but it's like you said, it's hard enough to grieve when things happen, but when you
Right.
don't have to have that added stress, I can say
Mhm.
so many women I know who've lost their husbands. It is a big deal, and
Mhm.
it's challenging. So, you know, if you guys out there, this sounds like something you're interested in, you're thinking, okay, I need to come up with a plan, sit down with your family, come up with a strategy that's going to work for you guys. I think that I think buying money with money, it doesn't have to, you know, you can fit into your income level to get yourself protected
Mhm.
so that if something happens to you, whether you pass away, whether you want to borrow from yourself with an index universal life policy, we do all kinds of policies. We just kind of like that one because, you can grow your money in it. But then also, if you have something happen to you, like me not being able to walk for 6 months with an infant, it's nice to be able to have something to fall back on. So I would encourage you guys to have those conversations with your family. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Roger. It's always amazing and enlightening. And I think next time we're going to tell you guys about the history of insurance. It's kind of fascinating how
Yes.
long it's been around. So, bye, friends. Thank you.